Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I actually have somebody who I know, and I felt very blessed when she agreed to do this interview. Her name's Rachel, and Rachel has struggled with psoriasis, and I am so glad that she wanted to share her story with you guys because I think she's a really interesting perspective on her journey and things she's gone through. And so, Rachel, thank you so much for being here and being the willingness to share, what you've gone through with everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, why don't you tell everybody what was going on when you ended up finally getting diagnosed with psoriasis?
So I had been diagnosed with Crohn's disease about a year before that. I was on Remicade and I started just spontaneously breaking out in psoriasis pretty much. And it went from like 0 to 100 basically. Like there was psoriasis on my scalp, all over my entire body, on my feet, my hands, like it was like 80% coverage. So it was pretty like shocking.
Yeah, and I'm sure that probably made normal life a little difficult, to say the least.
Yeah, it was extremely painful and I like didn't even want to leave my house.
Well, did people? I mean, this is the other piece to it. Do you feel like people understood what you were going through? Like people who don't have any of these issues, did they get it, or were people just sort of like, I don't know. What do you mean you're in pain? What do you mean like it doesn't? It's just rashes.
Yeah. So I think like the general public definitely were like, what's wrong with her? What kind of issue does she have? Is it contagious? Kind of like those stares that you get. But actually for the people that knew me, it was kind of better because like with Crohn's disease, it's pretty much invisible. So a lot of times people didn't see what I was going through, which I kind of liked sometimes. But with this, it was hard to ignore. So people started to be like, oh, okay, she's seriously sick, like something's seriously wrong, and kind of getting a little more sympathy from people that I knew at work or friends. And that was an interesting shift.
Well, and so you also mentioned something before we started that like doctors have been kind of stumped
Yes,
about what's
absolutely.
happened to you. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I got this rash, I actually had three total misdiagnoses before they figured out it was psoriasis. Um, so first, they thought that first I went to an urgent care and they told me that I had hand, foot, and mouth disease, which they said, mostly it's kids that get this, but you're immunocompromised, so it could be. And it was on my hands and feet. And so that's why they thought that. So they said, no worries, it'll just go away. Like just wait it out. And it got way worse. So then I went to my GI doctor and I'm like, this is happening. Is this related to my medicine? And he's like, I have no clue. So he literally starts taking pictures of me on his phone and texting it to his other doctor friends, like, have you ever seen this? This is crazy. And I'm like, this is comforting. Wow. so so then he refers me to a specialist, like an infectious disease specialist. Um, this older guy, and I'm sitting in his office after I wait for about a month in for this appointment, and he's literally Googling blah blah blah, like this random disease, and then showing me pictures and being like, this looks like what you have. And he told me that I had something called lichen planus.
Uh huh.
And basically it was like, here, take these steroids. Oh, that doesn't work. Take these other meds. Oh, that doesn't work. Like just huge trial and error.
Oh my gosh.
um,
How did that feel like going to the doctor and they're Googling and sending pictures? I mean, it's good that they admitted that they didn't know, but
yeah.
I don't think, right? I mean, I would feel like that's not very confidence inspiring.
No, and it was like I had already Googled it. Like I already knew everything they were saying. This is not helpful at all. It's a waste of my time. So,
So, how did you end up getting the diagnosis for psoriasis? Did you have to seek that out yourself through dermatologists?
yes. So then I went to a dermatologist. This is actually the second dermatologist I went to. The first one, it was kind of like, we don't know, take the steroid cream, but they didn't really know. So then I went to another dermatologist and they did a biopsy of my back, one of the psoriasis patches, and it actually really hurt. That was like my first biopsy and it was really scary. But at least they were able to determine that it was psoriasis.
And what did they tell you once they said that? Were they just like, well, this is what you have. You're just going to have to live with it? Like, what was the attitude that they shared with you?
pretty much like this is a lifelong disease. Here's the steroid cream. We don't know if this will ever go away. We don't really know what caused this.
Hmm.
It's weird that no one else in your family has this, but now you have it.
Yeah.
And I started doing my own research. That's when I found that Remicade actually can potentially start these type of conditions.
Yeah, and you're right about that. It's something that I've actually written about on Skin Interrupt, and I'll link that article below for anybody that might be resonating with, and you're like, wait, a medication could cause my psoriasis?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. So, do you want to share with everyone, like, you've obviously not just accepted, like, in this defeated way, that this is just how things are. That's one thing I love about you, that you're just like, I want to keep trying to figure out how I can be healthy and how I can, really live my best life. I've got all these years ahead of me. How did you get to the point where you didn't want to just throw in the towel? Or maybe did you, and then you had an aha moment that changed everything?
I mean, I was so in so much pain. Like I had something called pustular psoriasis on my hands and feet, and it was severe. Like I could barely walk. So it wasn't really an option to ignore it because it was the middle of the summer. I can't walk. I have a dog. Like, I have a job, stuff like that. So I was always kind of like seeking some sort of answer. And that's also just my personality. But it's definitely like easy when you're super depressed to just kind of like want to stay at home and not do anything and just hide. So there were periods of that too.
But you told me you started to follow people online, and that was part of what helped you. So tell everybody about that. I know it sounds like silly and so simplistic, but I think connecting, that idea of connecting with other people, can be helpful.
Yeah. So I first learned this with Crohn's disease actually. Like it's super isolating, but then when I would Google it on Instagram, there's like hundreds of accounts of people that are thriving and sharing their tips and kind of just commiserating and sharing memes. And that was just like so nice and like so comforting. And so with psoriasis, I did the same thing. And, I found people that have had this their whole life and are actually like embracing the spots they might have and being confident. And that was just like so cool.
Yeah. And I'm sure, too, it also makes you feel less alone in a sense.
Yeah.
I know when I was going through my eczema issues, I didn't know anybody else that had eczema. And I
Yeah.
actually didn't even think to like look it up until I was closer to the end of things, and I found all these Facebook groups, and just being in them too was also helpful to realize that what I went through was very normal, and it's really hard because you feel alone and you feel like, I thought somebody put the evil eye on me. I was like, why is this happening to me? Did
Yeah,
somebody
like you're
like,
cursed.
yes, exactly, exactly. So, I just kind of know this from having known you, but you've kind of chosen to keep on digging and not just accept, like, this is how you are. Why have you chosen to do some, like, look into some things that are more like integrative medicine type routes? What was the reason behind that?
I mean, I think part of it was just like the shock factor of going from like completely healthy to like all of these issues. And I felt like
Mm.
there had to be an answer. And just like being so disappointed by what the doctors were offering that I just started like investigating alternate things and figured it was worth the effort.
Yeah. And have you found it to be helpful?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not been easy. It's been like expensive and stressful and a huge amount of time, but I mean, my psoriasis is now gone, which is awesome, and I'm like feeling much better. So,
That's awesome. And so, one last question. So, now that the psoriasis is gone, do you ever have these worries that it could come back, or that maybe you get a weird feeling in the areas where you had, and you're like, is it coming back? Like, do you ever have those fears, or do you feel like you're kind of at peace with where you are?
no, absolutely. I'm like terrified it's going to come back. One reason because my doctors told me like psoriasis is a lifelong condition, there's no cure, and so we don't know if it's caused by your medicine or if it's just going to be your new life now, basically.
Mm.
Um, and I was following a very strict diet when I first was able to clear it up, and now I'm back to more of a average-ish diet. And so I definitely worry. Like every time I get a stomach ache, I'm like, oh, my Crohn's is coming back. Or, oh, every time I have an itch, I'm like, oh, this is a new patch of psoriasis coming up. And it's just like, it's hard, but also I'm like trying to live in the moment when I'm not dealing with it, which is nice.
Yeah. So do you have any final thoughts of like, and I know this might sound kind of strange, but like, have you ever felt like I'm kind of grateful that this happened to me, or I went through this because it's shown me this, or I learned this? Any thoughts?
Oh, yeah. I think like for me, going through like that for the last, I mean, I had it for like almost 6 months. I was dealing with that and my life was just like paused. So now I'm like, if I have something hard at work or a presentation I have to give, I'm like, oh, if you can get through psoriasis, you can get through this. It's like you can get through anything. So
Yeah.
just that confidence, I guess.
Awesome. That is so cool. That is so cool. And that's why I'm so grateful that you were willing to be here to share your story. And for those of you listening, if you want to connect with Rachel, I'm going to put her Instagram information below so you can send her a message. And she's just an awesome person. And I want to thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone's not alone.
It is very, very true. All right. Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate you being here. And everybody, go check out all of our other inspirational talks. That way you can hear other people's stories and know that you're not in this alone. Everybody has a very unique journey, and it's great to know that there's other people out there that know exactly what you're going through.